Guru Nation, I'm here on the beach with longtime industry insider, Andrew Mitchell. Andrew, how do people break into the industry?
And you learn, and you roll your sleeves up, and you learn by doing, and you learn by absorbing from folks around you
Now, when you got started, how many places did you apply to before you started getting interviews and favorable responses?
I got started at a CRO, and I wasn't really planning on getting into the industry. I kind of blacked out in landing there. But a lot of what you're doing at the start is writing test scripts and making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and some of it is as mundane as mundane can be, but you learn how to do things properly.
And was it tough to break in? Like, did you get a lot of no's before you got the yes, or were you one of the lucky ones where the first place you applied to hired you?
Thank you guys so much.
I was one of the lucky ones, but the first place that hired me didn't hire me to do anything particularly exciting or high profile. I got hired at the bottom, and you learn and you work and you switch jobs, and you figure it out.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. We'll do a podcast soon, episode 172. Tune in. The most important thing of what Andrew said is the first job you're going to take is not going to be where you're going to finish your career. So just take it. The most important thing is to get in the industry initially, and then worry about finding that ideal role later. But just get in first of all. Thank you, Andrew. So I just interviewed Andrew Mitchell, so you'll see his advice to anyone trying to break into the clinical research industry here. But basically, I wanted to forward that and preface it with, and I mentioned it in the video a little bit, but it's important to reiterate again, the first gig or job you get in this industry is probably not going to be the one that you end up with for the rest of your career. It's just a stepping stone. This industry really is about stepping stones. Andrew got really lucky. One of the first places he applied to back in the 90s, I think he got hired. It was a CRO, and he's just been climbing up that ladder ever since. Now he's a key opinion leader in this industry. We just did a podcast, I believe it's episode 172, about risk-based everything, which is a fascinating concept that he educated me on. But another thing he mentioned off camera, which I thought I should share with you, is the fact that you need to network. And maybe one of the things that helped him get hired right away was the fact that he spent months networking with people in the industry, because it really is an industry where, and probably every industry is like this, but I can't speak about every industry, but it really is an industry where it matters who you know, and those people are privy to letting you know about what jobs are available and who's hiring and who's a good fit for an entry-level position. So network. If you're not part of ACRP or SOCRA, you need to do that. Network as much as possible. LinkedIn, it's never been easier to network with people. Just do everything you can. Immerse yourself in this industry, and that's one way you can get to your first stepping stone. And then you just work your way up from there. So watch the video, and apologize for the choppy noise. We were at a restaurant right next to the ocean, so it looked nice, but the audio may not have been the best. But talk to y'all later, and go catch the podcast episode 2. Take care. Guru Nation, welcome to another episode of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru. I'm here with Andrew Mitchell, and he's in town in San Diego, so we got a chance to meet up. He's a longtime industry insider. How long you been in the industry?
Almost 20 years.
20 years.
I've known you for a few years.
Known me for about 5, 6?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So you've worked, good amount of companies, like a handful?
Yes,
throughout your career?
CROs and technology companies.
Aha. And we could get into the topic of, whenever I get experts like you on, we try to get into, I guess, where the puck is going, like Wayne Gretzky used to say, right? I don't go to where the puck is, I go to where it's gonna be.
Okay.
And we want to find out where this industry is headed. Now, I have my own opinions and theories, and we've discussed some of them at lunch. But it's good to get other people's opinions, right? Others even more entrenched in the industry than I am. I mean, I'm pretty much an outsider that got in at the site level, so I'm pretty familiar with site
Good
concepts.
place to get in.
Yeah, I mean, and that was just by accident, not by choice. But lucked into it.
You were born into it.
Born into it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, most people stumble into this or just,
Yeah.
you know,
You were destined for it from the cradle.
that's right. That's right. It's in my DNA. So, where is the industry headed? We talked about risk-based everything. Not just risk-based monitoring, risk-based everything.
Yeah, we were talking about the updates to GCP and requiring increased oversight, and we see risk-based, from risk-based monitoring to the agencies have a risk-based approach to when they're doing inspections, and the concepts of, how can I apply. In many ways, I see risk-based as common sense. How do I make sure that I'm spending my time most effectively?
Right.
And looking at the things that matter and not spending my time wasted on the things that don't matter. And the ICH updates were very much about, you can delegate, you can find people to do things for you, but you can't ultimately delegate responsibility. So even if you find somebody to do it, you can't wipe your hands and go, well, if they didn't do what they were supposed to, that's not my problem.
Yeah, that's the CRO's problem.
They signed the contract. At the end of the day, it's your drug. And it's your study. And if you're looking to get a drug to market, then you care about how that asset performs. Because it's a drug, or whatever kind of medicine it might be, but it's a commercial asset for your organization, and you're building your company and the lives of your employees on the success or failure. And if it's not going to be successful, then you need to find some others that are going to be. And a risk-based approach is, where do I spend all my energy and my resources and my money and my time? And risk-based everything, where it comes to the trial, is more than just how do I determine, how often a monitor should visit the site, but what are they doing when they're at the site? What else with regards to the study, like safety, for example? You don't want your safety team chasing runny noses. You want your safety team, and there might be a lot of runny noses, but you want your safety team chasing the adverse events that are materially significant. Whether they're materially significant because they could result in a label change or an update to the IB, or they're materially significant because they can impact the success or failure of your study or the commercial value of your drug, or chance of it getting approved.
So how do you know which ones are significant?
That is largely down to understanding what. So this is interesting. So when you get your site, who want to become a new site, do you get them to write a business plan?
That is a very good topic that I can do a whole podcast on that. The answer is yes. In short, it's yes. I don't think it's important long term, but to get their thoughts on paper and to have a plan, a rough outline of a plan, it's important.
So have you heard of a TPP for pharma? The Target Product Profile?
No.
So when
TPP?
TPP, yes.
No.
So when your drug is looking to go into the clinic, it's strongly advised that you put a plan together as to, what are my objectives here? What do I have? How do I think it works? And that's, what indications am I looking? What is am I looking to treat or potentially treat? What's the population group? It's called the Target Product Profile, the TPP.
Okay. TPP.
Yes, and in there you're also defining what are the adverse events that I expect to see, and that are likely then going to be part of the label, and those can be based on your knowledge from similar drugs, from the mechanism of action, from the class of drugs, from just the progression of the disease, all those kinds of things can help determine what you are expecting to see from day one before you dose the first patient in a phase 1 trial. From there, obviously, you learn more about your drug, and you establish more of a safety profile, and when you understand tolerability and toxicity, and look towards getting to phase 2. And when you're going to start looking at the efficacy. But yeah, I mean, you've done phase 1 trials.
Yeah, we have. We've done phase 1. Not on healthy volunteers, interestingly enough. I've monitored phase 1 healthy volunteers, but as a site, we've done a lot of schizophrenia, a lot of oncology, phase 1.
And how were you asked to look after serious adverse events that were expected?
No real training given, other than what's your SOP and follow it. And it's just the standard within 24 hours, notify sponsor, notify IRB. Once it's been resolved, send a follow-up report.
So, and
sponsor IRB.
If the adverse event was something that was expected versus one that's unexpected,
no difference to the site.
The site treats it the same.
Yeah, no difference.
And what about for adverse events where they expect to see maybe, 25% of the patient population group are likely to experience this?
Expected AEs, yeah.
The course of treatment, the way that what are you expected to do in terms of treating the patient, or what are the signs to look out for before it becomes serious? How?
For AEs?
Yes.
Those are pretty much left to the PI's discretion. The protocol usually allows for rescue meds when things like that occur. Like schizophrenia is a good example when we would get a exacerbation of psychosis, right? Because these are people we'd be washing them off of their antipsychotics. They expect a large percent to experience exacerbation of psychosis.
Yep.
So they would have a list of acceptable rescue meds. So as long as you're documenting it, you're documenting the AE and documenting the course of treatment.
Yep.
That's really all we had to do. And then enter everything in the EDC, like the AE itself, the ConMed history, that kind of stuff.
And are there treatments where you're told to avoid? Because
they would tell you these are exclusion. They would train you on this. So here's the list of approved rescue meds, and then these are the meds that are used in the industry, but for this study they're prohibited. So they would tell you beforehand. Now it's up to the PI if they want to completely withdraw the patient.
Yeah.
Right, and then refer them to their primary care or their psychiatrist in this case, or give them the prescription themselves.
So what happens if the patient asks for treatment which you don't want them to have on the study? Then you're withdrawing them from the study.
You've got to withdraw them, or you've got to talk to the patient.
And then, so you report the adverse event to the site, to the sponsor.
Yep.
CRA comes and visits. Or how is the sponsor checking that you did what you were supposed to?
Just through the SDR, SDV. Just coming in, the CRA is coming in, looking at the progress notes, looking at the ConMed logs, looking at the EDC, just like they would anything else.
And have you seen that change over the course of the study? That as one learns more about the drug, the way in which you treat some of those expected adverse events changes?
No, I have not seen that. It's pretty much the same from the beginning of the study till the end.
That's interesting.
They may have had more experience with other sites. They may be a little quicker as to recommending how to document. But no, it's handled the same. Unless they amend the protocol. Right, and then they'll do a training. Yeah. So sometimes they'll amend the protocol and say we've added this medication to the approved rescue meds because a lot of sites are complaining or whatever. A lot of the times these people designing these protocols are out of touch with real world treatment. A lot of these medical monitors, not all but many, they're just they're in an ivory tower. They don't know what psychiatrists are using anymore in the real world. They have all these ideas on paper and in other studies that they've read, but In the real world, it's very different.
So when you report an adverse event to the sponsor, the site has to makes the determination as to the as reported causality, as to whether
PI.
they think the PI determines whether, firstly, if it was expected or not.
Yes.
But also, do they think it was related or possibly related to the study drug?
Severity and then causality.
Yep. Now, the sponsor or
and
the
only
CRO,
the PI can do that.
Now, the sponsor or the CRO needs to review that and make their own determination of that. And both of those is what goes to the health authorities, like the FDA in the SUSA reporting. Now, some sponsors will have a safety physician that is part of the drug safety department.
Yeah.
And other sponsors will have their medical monitors
Usually
fulfill that
Usually it's
role.
been the medical monitor in my experiences with that. Medical monitor. And this is a good topic, I think, of people, and maybe even like industry people that don't have experience with the site level. Maybe they don't understand it. Once that site sends that initial and that follow-up report, like that is now out of our hands. So we've done what we needed to do. We never hear about it again.
Well, the only thing you care about is treating the patient now.
Treating the patient, and if we ever hear about it again, it's in the form of a SUSAR. Like when we get it.
When you get
our own SUSAR report to us.
Or requests for additional information, like is there more lab work that's come through?
Sometimes they try to find it, like get some additional information to finalize the
Did the patient have his history? Yeah.
Or they just ask for, sometimes we're waiting for hospital records if the patient was hospitalized. So some of those things take time. But as far as the PI's narrative and notes and his or her own opinion, that can be sent quickly.
And then from your experience, the medical review is done by the medical monitor.
Usually.
Once
it leaves the site, we lose track of what's going on.
And do they call and talk to the PI? I mean, how
rare, very rare.
So you said that they are out of touch with.
If any further correspondence occurs, it's usually between the medical monitor and the coordinator, and the coordinator is usually the messenger of the PIs. So the answer doesn't come right away. The medical monitor sends an email question. Coordinator asks the PI. We don't know if they actually do or don't. And then they craft a response.
And then the medical monitor makes their assessments of the adverse events in terms of causality.
In the rare occasion, they'll want to talk to the PI on the phone, but it hasn't happened that often.
And you said that the medical monitor, especially with psych med, is out of touch with how you're actually treating the patient and
sometimes.
So
I've been personally and I'm not a psychiatrist, but I've had personal frustrations many a time with medical monitors that don't understand something, maybe a treatment, and something's considered a prohibited treatment when in reality it's not.
So how do they do? Here's
a perfect example. There was a study we had. It was a schizophrenia study. So obviously they are wanting to exclude anyone that has any signs of being bipolar.
Okay.
Lithium is a mood stabilizer. It's not approved for schizophrenia, but it's used in 90% of cases with schizophrenics. Why? They have mood swings too. Right? It's not just bipolar people that have mood swings. Schizophrenics can have mood swings too. Matter of fact, schizophrenics can have depression. Right? So when a psychiatrist prescribes a real-world schizophrenic patient lithium and an antidepressant to go along with their antipsychotics, it's not a problem. This is done all the time. In research, when you do that, that triggers queries, that triggers possibly deviations. I mean, it's a can of worms. And so this is one way where I think that the way they're designing some of these studies are not factoring in real-world patients, or they just know that the psychiatrists are prescribing these things anyways, but they want them off the record.
Well, that doesn't help to have them off the record in the trial.
No. Yeah. And so I've gotten into a year-long debate with a medical monitor over a patient who was taking lithium.
A year-long debate.
And he was trying to make me explain how that patient's not bipolar.
So,
and it got to the point where I had to have 3 different the PI and 2 sub-I psychiatrists all talk to the medical monitor, who's also a psychiatrist, but not
practicing
real-world psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And just, there's a disconnect between them.
And they're the ones doing the safety assessment.
I would assume he is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this was a smaller biotech.
So do you think this... I mean, you mentioned over lunch as well that you're involved with some immunotherapy.
Yeah, oncology. Yeah.
So oncology...
Less experience there,
but hugely complicated.
I'm learning.
I mean, and very complicated disease, complicated disease progression, complicated treatments.
50 plus treatments, conmeds.
And exactly, and the way that your drug interacts, as well as the number of rounds of radiation. Do you think this is even more of a problem in that area with medical
monitors? In my
monitors?
limited experience, I see that it could be. In the studies I've done, the protocols are more inclusive. Because they're just looking for that long-term data. They're not really trying to keep people from joining the study as they would in a psych study, where they want like somebody who almost doesn't exist.
Sure.
So I haven't seen that to be a problem in oncology, but I've only done a handful of these oncology trials, and they're simple studies that I've been on.
So how do you feel the medical monitors need better training? Do you think it's about improved communication with the sites?
I don't think it's improved communication.
Is it just you're always going to have different egos involved and different personalities?
I think it's philosophy. Like, what is schizophrenia? And if you're going to argue that, and if you're going to argue that there's a difference between what a schizophrenic is in the real world versus what one is in academia, I mean, you're not going to agree on that. More communication's not going to help. We had plenty of communication with this particular medical monitor.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a problem that's ever going to go away. There's always going to be a difference of opinion or definitions between academia
at the root of it is designing studies that are more inclusive to the real world population rather than what a researcher wants to see to get statistically significant results, which is supply and demand, because when there's a lot of studies out there, the sponsors know that sites are more selective, so they'll design.
So when you were talking rare diseases, where you can't be so selective, is it better then?
When you're talking rare diseases, I think you're just trying to get anyone with that diagnosis in.
Exactly.
That should be the only inclusion criteria.
Exactly. So then do you think we need to learn from what they've been doing in rare diseases?
Yeah. Protocol waivers, and I think the FDA is more lenient. It's not that the sponsor doesn't want to necessarily. I think the FDA tells them, hey, we're giving you the fast track.
So you started with talking about risk-based monitoring, risk-based everything.
Risk-based everything. It's the first time I heard this ever.
So what you're really saying is, have a more risk-based approach to your patient enrollment as well.
Yeah, or start with study design. I mean, maybe we can borrow best practices from rare diseases. I've never worked, that I can remember, I have not worked on a rare disease trial that I could remember. I probably would have turned them down as a site, just because it's hard to get those patients. There's only a handful of doctors in the U.S. that can enroll for some of these trials, and guess what? Out of that handful, probably 100% have never done research, which is another problem.
Yeah. Well, that's the challenge that you deal with every day. And of the ones that do, how you get them to do that second trial.
That's right. Yep. Lots of stuff here, but you've never been at the site level, so does this stuff, like, real world patients versus good patients on paper, did you know that was an issue in the industry, or?
I knew it was an issue. And there's definitely a challenge between, at the end of the day, you're collecting data to try and prove a hypothesis. But you're helping people get better. Yeah. That, for some of them, this is a last resort, that they're trying, investigational, non-approved drugs. And you're dealing with them and their lives and their families. That's a disconnect. You know, the very nature of that is there's always going to be a disconnect.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to humanize the data. It's also good to appreciate the importance of scientific rigor.
Yeah.
In, you know, so there, you know, it's
and maybe having adaptive trials, right? Or I mean, I take that back. We have worked on a rare disease trial, tardive dyskinesia, for which is a subset of schizophrenia, and it was very inclusive, very easy to get patients in. The hardest part was finding the actual patients with TD, but once you found one, they're almost certainly going to get in, and they were willing to give any waivers to get those patients in because they were so rare. But I think that comes from the FDA guidance, not necessarily from sponsor deciding that that's a good idea. Because obviously they would want all of them in, unless it's one of those Me Too drugs, which they're looking for patients who are gonna succeed regardless of the treatment, right?
Yeah, or even some of those Me Too drugs, they're still finding a way to be a little bit different as a Me Too, whether it's, you know, a particular set of biomarkers that they're gonna treat more effectively.
Better safety profile.
Yeah. I mean, we have come a long way.
RBE, risk-based everything.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
I think I've also heard it called RBX.
Really?
Yeah.
This is another first for me today.
Yeah.
RBX? What does that stand for?
Risk-based everything.
Oh, X. Okay. Huh. That could be the title of this podcast.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrew. Anything else?
No problem.
I know you gotta go. I gotta go.
Good to see you again.
Getting more sites on board.
That's good. And
retention.
Yeah, retention is important.
When you have the announcement, we'll do another one.
Yeah, we'll do another one.
Lots of interesting stuff coming out from you guys.
Yeah, it's a good space.
Good.
Cool. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Andrew. Take care, everybody.